The beast of World of Tanks console, the SU-100Y, is a vehicle I absolutely love in the game, and it's because it has probably tier for tier a very, very powerful main armament, because it can do a ton of damage. It has 170 penetration, which means you can go through pretty much everything you come up against, maybe struggle with some tier 8 super heavies potentially, but for the most part you can still pen most things, especially if you're aiming for weak points, which makes the SU-101 a definite dangerous tank to come up against, even if you are playing a tier 8, because it can do up to 540 damage, I believe, with its premium rounds, because of course the premium rounds do more damage. They get slightly less penetration. I think they suffer about 20mm, so it's not a massive amount, but it definitely does impact your ability to pen everything. But you can see here, I'm pushing up on Fisherman's Bay. Now there is an artillery piece, which, you know, when you're in a big box tank that is basically made of paper, which this tank is, it's gigantic, it's slow, it's definitely an easy target for artillery to basically munch upon, but either way, you can still make this tank work, and this is what this replay is going to showcase. It's not even a top tier game. We are playing up against tier 7s in this game, and this tank is probably better when you're playing up against tier 7s or tier 8 tanks, because there's more health on the enemy team to actually take, so that's always a good sign of a broken vehicle, is when you're kind of limited by being top tier. So yeah, I've always enjoyed playing the SU-100Y, and I'm sure many of you actually have this within the game, and of course I'm interested to see what you guys think about this vehicle as well. Now, one tank that you have to be very, very careful of is things like the Dreadnought, things like the KV-2, things like the artillery pieces, because you are made of paper, so everything that hits you is gonna pen, and when you've only got 700 hit points, you can basically be one shot as well as do a lot of one-shotting in the game as well. So that's what this tank is primarily about. You can see me actually hitting the KV-2 on the enemy team, dealing a significant amount of damage to him, and then actually ending up finishing him off. So getting rid of the opposite number in terms of the kind of broken tank. Now we try and avoid the OI, since that does have a HE gun, or at least can have a super high damage gun. So we're pulling right the way back and trying to go for the Tiger. Now we land a nice shot into him for 490. So at this point I'm thinking, I don't really want to be the furthest forward up against an OI, a Tiger and some others, so I'm going to pull back a little bit. And of course you can do that. Now this tank is not the fastest, but it's not the slowest either. You can go about 35 kilometers an hour, and that's on pretty bad terrain right here. So that's one thing that you can take advantage of if you're interested in playing this thing. And it's really, really cheap to pick up, and it is a bundle of fun. I highly recommend you guys actually jump in and play the SU-100Y, primarily because, you know, you probably won't get the experience that you can with this tank at very many tiers, and it's a lot easier to use a derp gun, or it's not even a derp gun, to be honest. The accuracy is very, very good, so it's very rare that you get a consistent gun like this within World of Tanks that can deal so much damage tier for tier as this tank can. And yeah, I highly recommend you guys do it. It's super cheap as well, so if you are interested in the premium, then you can go ahead. Now there isn't really a tech tree vehicle like this, to be honest, other than maybe the SU-100, but it doesn't get the alpha damage that this tank gets. But yeah, it's still a very, very competitive tier 6 tank destroyer. But this one, yeah, a bundle of fun, and one thing that I love is blind firing enemy tanks. And we finish off the broken tier 6 tank destroyer in the enemy team, the Hellcat. And I absolutely love finishing off the broken Seal Clubby tanks, so especially when you're playing in a broken Seal Clubby tank. I guess I'm not entirely sure if it's a seal clubbing tank, to be honest, primarily because, you know, once you've done your shell of damage you can get taken out very, very quickly, and it's not necessarily the easiest tank to play and carry games in, since you have a fairly long reload. You're looking at about 9 seconds, but considering you do 500 damage, which is pretty much 70% of the hit points of most tier 6s, then it's not too bad at all. So and now at this point it's 2,700 damage done in this tier 6, remember, and 239 assistance, and at this point it's just trying to get some more damage if possible against the OI on the enemy team. And considering he hit me earlier, I'm feeling like getting my own back with this next shell, hopefully, fingers crossed, against this tank, if he doesn't already get taken out before I get there. Now, one thing that you do have to note about this tank is if you are deciding about getting this vehicle is that it's very frustrating when you come up against tier 8s that are consistently able to deal a ton of damage. Now, one thing that we do there is high roll massively and coming up from behind against the OI. Hopefully we're going to be able to reload. Everyone on the team is just missing, and luckily we're able to hit the side of the turret unangled very easily, picking up the last kill of the game. So 3,300 damage done, picking up 3 enemies destroyed, as well as the victory, and coming top with 1,700 base experience. Certainly not the best game I've ever had in the SU-100Y, but not far off in terms of the kind of shots that we are hitting and the fun and enjoyment that you can get out of a tank like the SU-100Y. So fingers crossed you do enjoy the replays, but of course we've got one more before we end up this video, and hopefully you leave your comments as to what you think about this tank. So the next replay that we have is on El Haloof, and this one was an interesting one in terms of being able to just remove hit points, and that's because we're top tier. And when you're top tier in a tank that can do 500 and something damage, then yeah, opponents don't tend to stick around too long after you've hit them 1 or maybe even just 2 shells. So pretty much everyone can be 2-shot in this game, so as if they basically take a shell from someone else, they can be removed by this vehicle. So it's very, very easy to come away with a lot of enemies taken out within this. And you can see me here going after the Hellcat at the beginning of the game, who makes the mistake of getting spotted. Now, we don't manage to actually hit, but don't worry, we may come back for him later on. But either way, he's of course making his way to the encounter battle, capture the flag base, whatever you want to call it. You know, hopefully he doesn't actually jump in there and actually try and cap the base. So at this point I'm thinking, this is kind of a bit rubbish if the enemy tanks just decide to YOLO this side, because it's only really 3 tanks over here that are going to be able to deal with anyone. A lot of the team are camping in the base for some reason, but then again it is tier 6, and for some reason everyone tends to camp there whether it's tier 6 or tier 10. It doesn't actually make any difference, but either way we get a little bit of assistance on the Matilda Black Prince using this spot once again. If you watched the light tank video that was super annoying, then make sure to have a look at that and check out this spot either way. But you can get up here in pretty much any tank. You just literally have to do a little wiggle as you go up, and you can get into this position and try and spot opponents that are in the kind of center of the map and deal with them there. Now there's quite a few people that have pushed up on the enemy team into A1, A2, and of course our team are pushing in there quite nicely as well. But we're seeing and waiting for this opponent that is of course down there. But one thing that I do know is that someone in the back has actually been shooting, and of course we hit them blind because, hello there Hellcat, appears like we found you again. And unfortunately for him, he does even get spotted pretty much directly after, and we take away the rest of his hit points. So yeah, really nice result there, and of course coming away with a brilliant 550 damage early on in the game, or at least somewhat early on, and now it's a case of trying to find the rest of the enemy team who are over here. And talking about one tank, oh, it's a G1R. He's on full health, he's on 0 health. And this is where this tank just feels horrible to come up against. Now, unfortunately for us, the Skoda T25 on the enemy team actually manages to break our gun and also remove some crew members or something like that. But we quickly put those back in and take him out of the game as well. But at this point, there's a Panzer V4 who's intent on being removed, so he goes back to the garage as well, which is lovely to see. That tier 5/ tier 6 heavy medium light tank destroyer that is the Panzer V4 gets taken out as well. But the VK3601H on the enemy team, a medium, and some other vehicles are over this side, along with some tank destroyers that are camping in their base from what I could see. Of course, one being spotted in H9. So at this point I'm kind of thinking, it's time to push towards the medium tank, maybe get him out of the game. And as I kind of push towards this medium tank to get behind him in this position, oh look, a VK3601H who crosses the middle area and gets taken out very quickly. It's always nice to see. And then of course the Panzer IV-H, which has the dirt gun, actually doesn't even pen me and only manages to splash with HE, so even better, and we pick him up as an additional enemy to our tally in this game. There is of course 5 enemies left on the enemy team, so let's push forward and try and get some of them. I stopped for a second just to pre-aim this kind of area over here. A lot of people kind of camp up there, and I often get blind fires on people that are sat up there. And of course it kind of gives you a little bit of self-assurance that if you push down this hill that you're not going to get just farmed by someone sat up there at the current moment in time. But nonetheless we kind of push forward. I see a tree go down on the hill over to the right, so we know that there's at least one person there. We also see a round come down from the hill, so I'm going to make my way over to this sort of area. Seems like that's where the majority of the enemy team are. And as we come over here, the shptk-tvp, which I believe is the tier 4 or tier 5 kind of derp German tank destroyer, but he's quickly removed as well for full health with just 1 shell, and of course very well in as well. It's not like you have to actually high roll or anything, or even near roll. You can low roll and still take that guy out with this vehicle, which is just funny in itself. But 2,200 damage done, 5 enemies taken out as well. And pushing towards potentially getting the Radley Walters within this game. There's a Matilda Black Prince on pretty much no health, but hopefully we'll be able to take him out, do a little barely aim because I just wanted the enemy, and of course we managed to hit as well, which is lovely. There's an SU-100 on the enemy team who's kind of sat up in the campy position, and we're just waiting for him to make a mistake potentially. Doesn't appear like he's going to do that, so we're just set up and wait for him to maybe crop up somewhere. We also then finish off the Panzer SFL, which is nice, and the SU-100 is also looking over this way, but we don't want to poke out in front of him because he can take me out in one singular shell. And I'm just thinking now, maybe we'll be able to get the Radley Walters by picking this guy up, but we definitely need him to receive at least 1 hit before we shoot him, since we're not going to be able to probably finish him off for that much damage unless we super high rolled on our damage. So we don't manage to do that. Just letting you know that we're not going to be able to deal 580 damage to the SU-100, but we'll see how much damage, if we do at all, to him. Now our team are pushing up and the SU-100 makes his advance, and I'm thinking, easy damage, and then I realise oh damn it, he's behind the ridge. I didn't realise that was actually part of a different terrain, and of course we miss, and that is pretty much game over. We don't manage to pick up the Radley Walters, even though we could have 100% done it if we just actually aimed where we could actually aim. And unfortunately the enemy artillery decides he's going to jump in the lake and finish himself off, and that should happen right about now sometime as we're moving up the hill, I believe. But yeah, just a little spoiler warning for you guys. The Hummel then finishes himself off, but 7 enemies taken out with 2,300 damage. Pretty low amount of damage for 7 enemies taken out, but there isn't that much damage in a top tier game, and hence why I'm talking about the tier 7 games being the better ones for the SU-100Y. So yeah, really did enjoy playing this tank, and for some reason the game kind of like lagged or like went weird and it wouldn't actually come up with any screen, so we were just waiting for ages and ages, and of course the victory screen doesn't actually appear, I believe, and we end up just back in the garage for some reason. But yeah, there you go, back in the garage. But don't worry, the results are actually coming up in a second. But overall, the SU-100Y, a really cheap premium that would probably cost you like £5 or something like that to pick up, that is so much fun and 100% worth it. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you give your opinions on the SU-100Y down below, and don't forget to check out the gameplay and tank reviews playlist on screen right now, and of course the most recent gameplay video on the left. Thank you, and goodbye.